Welcome to another episode of the Inspire Roundtable. This is a place where ideas and leaders meet. And today's agenda is very special to me. Today's agenda is about the power of data-driven decision making in talent acquisition, which has been doing a lot of news about the power of data and how we can make decisions, analytics, and so we will discuss a lot of things on that. Before we start, let me brief you about InstaHire, what we do. So we are a platform which allows companies to find talent with 10x more accuracy and 10x less time to any other solutions in the market. So we are trusted by companies like Google, Amazon, Walmart, Cisco, PayPal, Salesforce, and 10,000 plus enterprises use our product. So we start off our journey today with two of very prominent HR leaders we have amongst us. So I will like to call upon Suresh. Suresh heads the talent acquisition India at Genesys. So Suresh, a brief introduction about you to our folks who have joined in and to all our viewers. So welcome, Suresh. Open to you.
Thank you, Sarvajit. It's a pleasure being part of this platform. And a quick introduction about me. I'm heading the talent acquisition function for Genesys in India, and I bring about 20 years of experience. So I have two parts to my career. Last 15 years, I've been into talent acquisition, but I started my career in investment banking and technology. I always found talent acquisition as something very interesting, so I then decided to pursue a platform. Here I am. And Genesys, we are basically a customer experience software leader in the market. Mm-hmm. And we specialize in providing customer experience software solutions. It could be a call center, it could be chatbots, to a lot of customers. We are primarily a B2B market organization, and we work with some of the world's largest premium brands across different industries. We are a company headquartered in US with over 6,000 employees across the world. And in India, we are primarily based in Chennai and Hyderabad with a workforce close to about 650 today.
Great having you with us, Suresh. We'll have a very exciting session here. Now, help me welcome Akshay Mathur. So he's a renowned HR leader who has led many large companies. So over to you, Akshay, a brief introduction about you and your experience and their opinions about the current market.
Surely, Sarvajit. Thank you so much for having me here, and good evening, everyone. So you guys know my name. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. My grounding was in the business. So I started my journey in the business and then found my calling in corporate HR. Predominantly has been a talent leader, and then graduated into recruiting roles as well. So that's my day job. Plus, I have always been very interested in HR tech and the other aspects of talent management, especially on future of work and how the skill competency framework works. So that's the area of which I work on my gigs, as I call them. Have been a very fulfilling journey so far, and let's see how things shape up from here. But I would say pretty interesting and pretty fulfilling, career latest for me. Again, thanks so much for having me here.
Surely. So Akshay and Suresh, welcome to the Inspire Roundtable, and let us start off. So my first question. So let's start off with Suresh first. So big data, AI, machine learning, these buzzwords are like now a staple in talent acquisition. Can you share a real life example where these technologies dramatically impacted your hiring process? We'll start with Suresh, and then we'll have Akshay also on this.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, as you rightly said, these are some of the buzzwords in industry, and people kind of throw these around a lot. But over the last 5-10 years, I've seen a lot of influx of AI and machine learning into talent acquisition. Some of the areas that I have personally seen great success. One is your talent analytics, because today talent analytics is a big challenge, right? So when we are engaging with persons, when you're doing a strategy mapping for our hiring plans, and the kind of tool that is available in the market, the kind of insights that we get about the talent heat map, about the challenges that we may foresee for certain specific kind of hires. Talent analytics is a space that we have extensively seen success using AI and ML-driven models, and also. Today, when we are moving into a more gender-neutral, D&I-specific, hiring structures, so a lot of applications and tools are available for us to help in terms of crafting our candidate pitch, job descriptions, which are not targeting any specific gender or any specific part of the target community. So these are two areas that I've seen a lot of hands-on success and a lot of positive results coming when we use AI and ML-driven products.
Okay. So Akshay, your thoughts on this? On this big data, AI, machine learning, and how it's impacting the hiring process right now?
See, it's a buzzword, and it's been the buzzword for many years. And honestly, the market is also a little chaotic, and it creates a lot more confusion for consumers like us in terms of which product to go for and which product to really keep it on the side. I think for me, what's important is as long as the product or the solution, whatever it may be, whether it's in-house or off the shelf, it is fulfilling the problem of quality of hire, hiring team and managers' effectiveness and candidate experience. As long as these three criteria are getting matched, then I will definitely is a product or a solution of great interest to me, and that's how I've actually segued the solutioning all this while. And I've actually done umpteen implementation as well. One which comes on top of my mind is a product by the name Pymetrics, in which I actually implemented a few years ago. It's a AI audited technology for finding the best quality of talent from a vast pool of individuals, and it worked pretty well. So I know I can go on this, but probably I'll let people probably search more about Pymetrics. It's a great tool. It's little on the expensive side, but I think it brings the ROI which somebody's looking for. But and the tools which are purely on screening or sourcing, I would say little averse with those tools, because there is a opportunity of getting biased. There's an opportunity of actually being put on the loggerheads with compliance and risk management side of it. So we tread little comfortably and cautiously. So I think for me, something which is more in these, in the candidate selection space is a lot more of interest rather than in the sourcing and funneling state. But that's again very personal choice of mine.
Okay, understood. Okay, great insights, Akshay. So I will continue with you. So as recruiters, we often trust our instincts when we make our decisions, right? So how does data analytics come into play without undermining that gut feeling which we have?
See, personally, and for myself as well as for the teams I've led, one thing I've always advised that use data analytics or these tools which you have as your night vision goggles, as I call it, right? It is not there to replace your years of experience, your gut, based on which you want to make a decision making. These are the tools for augmenting what you're trying to do, right? Making it a little bit more effective and efficient. And a process which is more linear. I think that's where I see the opportunities for utilizing these kind of products. Also, at times, these products or data analytics as a thematically helps you to really bounce off your gut, whether it is really you're doing it the right way or there is an opportunity for you to amend your thought process, right? Because at times, we all are, we get stumbled upon our own unconscious bias, right? And I think it's a good checkpoint at times of using these, analytical tools or data analytics as a theme to really do your daily job, to do the bouncing off and show that you are on the right path and you don't get waved because of your biasness, which for sure we all have it, but we need to figure out what's the right way to be away from it. So I think that's where it helps us in multiple ways.
So you're saying that data analytics can be a sounding board for your ideas, and then you can have a check so that if everything is going well or not. So this kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would say again, augment it. Don't fall back on either of them, right? So don't be totally go on gut. Don't go total. I think there is a middle path to it, right? And I think that's where we need to. So use it like a humanoid rather than a totally a bot or totally as someone which is there for you. Use and don't use it blindly. I think that's very important.
Understood. Understood. So, Suresh, what are your thoughts on that? Like, as humans, we have our instincts when we make the decisions. Key, this guy will be best for us, or this lady will be best for us. So, how does analytics come into play without like undermining that gut feeling? So, what are
Well,
your
I
thoughts on
can, to a certain extent, do echo what Akshay said, because today, AI cannot replace a role of a recruiter, right? Because there is a
that?
lot of
Yes.
experience, insight that comes as a recruiter that they invest. So
Mm,
basically, these tools can be enhancer to the job that we do, because what happens today is a lot of times when we have these strategic conversations with the leadership
mm,
of the organizations,
mm,
sometimes that driven conversation might not be the right approach, right? When you're doing a strategic planning. So sometimes when you have data that kind of backs your instance, or the gut that gives you the patterns that you've seen over the years, but the data backs those the observations or the thoughts that we have, I think that's the best way to go. Like Akshay said, it's very important for us to find that right balance, because it can't just be gut, because there are a lot of unconscious biases that we carry as humans that kind of manifest into the thoughts and the a vision that we have. So it's important for us to find the balance between how data is presented versus is the data really speaking the reality of the market today. So finding that balance really helps, because when you go to leadership, when you have these strategic conversations with businesses for planning strategy and everything, data really helps, because they're able to quickly buy into the idea and move forward on the process and the implementations quickly from there. It kind of takes away the ambiguity, because there is some data that kind of backs the vision or the process that we're looking to establish.
understood. So, like continuing with that, Suresh, I will have the next question for you. So, the use of analytics can like really change or revolutionize the way we hire, right? So, can you share your vision on the future of recruitment with a lot of data at the forefront, like people making decisions on a basis of a lot of data, maybe historic data, maybe real life, like real data, like which is live data which feeds you, and what will be the future of recruitment with data at the forefront, Suresh?
So to me, data is going to be a great enabler in the work that we do, Sarabjit. So for me, the vision of using AI or data for the future is basically it kind of automates certain percentage of the role or the job that a recruiter does. So that time is given back to them, so they can focus more on the human experience. So
Hmm.
human experience can be with the candidates or can be with your business stakeholders. So for me, the vision is if AI is able to kind of take away some of the mundane activities that a recruiter does on a daily basis and give the time back to them, so they're able to focus on building strategic relationships and partners with the candidate community plus the business community. For me, that's the best use of data and analytics in a talent acquisition space.
Okay, and so Akshay, what are your thoughts on this as data at the forefront and like the future recruitment with a lot of data, kind of like historic plus real life, real feed data?
So, echoing to what Suresh said, I would say future is now.
Hmm.
So, I think what's really important to identify and appreciate that, every organization has their own maturity model, right? So there's such few organizations which are very, way ahead in their, way of operating using data and analytics, right?
Hmm.
Something which comes to my mind is like Google, what probably a lot of organizations are doing today. Google did it with their people analytics function like almost like 10, 15 years ago, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So every organization are at a different stage, of the maturity. Keeping that in mind, I would say, see, the sky is the limit, and the chat products like Chat GPT has made the accessibility of such technology to everyone and anyone on a click of a button. So I think it has made life a lot more easy, and I think more democratized the solutioning somebody has
Yeah.
in hand. And so there can be multiple use cases, and I'm sure a lot of them are already being used. But I
Hmm.
would say predictive analytics is something which is going to be used extensively.
Okay.
Where recruiting organization would be a little bit more forecastive in their operations. They would be able to do talent and demand planning in a much more better way.
Okay.
The skill gap analysis is something which I think data would really help them know which of the skills are in demand and where are the gaps, and then work with the internal teams to really help in filling those gaps through internal mobility or through talent harvesting. When we talk about the external talent pool, virtual interviews are already happening, but yeah, it will just get better and better with using the APIs from like product like ChatGPT, for example. And I think I'm very excited about using analytics in our diversity and inclusion initiatives, right? I think because as we've been talking about unconscious bias again and again in each and every of our talk track, I think that's where it will really help us to pinpoint where are the spikes of which creating little a biased way of operating. And again, it's not intentional, but insights through data can really help us to uncover those biasness, and then work on a path which is much more cleaner, more neutral, and is representing a lot wider spectrum of people who can be actually considered for a role in an organization at a given point in time. So I think that excites me a lot more than anything else, because but again, ChatGPT has democratized it. I think it has made that difference between haves and haves not, but lot more shorter. And then I think people will really, it will be a great help to majority of us.
Great. So I completely agree with the points which you said. Like, we have a tool which is very similar to what we are like forecasting and gap, like understanding the gap plus the diversity angle which you put on. So we have a tool which is a talent intelligence tool which we give to the companies so that they can identify, and they can also modify the emails which they send to this diversity candidates, because some emails are very, very gender biased. Okay, and they need to be modified accordingly, because there are some certain words which we might use, like as you said, unconscious bias. We might use them, but that might not go with the other type of communities. So that is what we are also trying to do, and like great insights from you, Akshay, on this. So Akshay, continuing with the next question, and then I will move to Suresh on this. So as we say, a successful hiring process, it often hinges on finding the right candidate, not for just for the job, but also for the culture. And culture is one of the primary importance in today's world. Be it startups, be it large enterprises, be it multinationals, they are like vouching for culture. So how can data help maintain this balance, not only for the right job, but also a similar culture, and getting candidates who are of a similar DNA as the company?
No, I think the cultural assessment has become a lot more easier to conduct by using the power of data, right?
Yes.
I think all of us have gone through the process of writing surveys or doing those pulse surveys every few months. But then at the end of the day, it was a Herculean task to really get the crux out of the surveys, right? In terms of what they're trying to say, right? And I think using the power of analytics, we are able to actually drill down in terms of what are the engagement levels, which are the areas where we need to probably double down on improving employees' experience, or what are the areas where we need to probably develop talent more, and what are the dire necessities of hygiene factors. Now, all that can result in calculating what we call the culture index, right? And the culture index becomes your benchmark score, or whatever you might say, which can be used by recruiting organization to really measure a candidate against those benchmarks and see how far or how close a person is from a cultural compatibility perspective, right? I think I know still it is far from being used so far. Predominantly, I think analytics or the tools which we are using today are more for probably cleaning the data from a sourcing and a screening perspective, or at the same time, or probably running assessments which are capturing your technical competencies. But there is a big white space available where cultural index measurement and comparing with what that the incumbent would bring in, I think is a very exciting space to be in. And I think that's where analytics can be of great help.
Great. So coming to Suresh. So as Akshay has told about the cultural index, and which is there, but it needs to be solidified and templatized. So what are your thoughts on like how can data help maintain say culture and also the right skills, because you hire for both, like culture plus the right skills. So how do you think, like you can say some examples also on this, like if you want.
Sure. So to me, what data does to the culture is probably help us identify the blind spots, because today, with data coming in, culture fit or understanding the culture of the organization is no more a subjective term. Right? There's a lot of science that goes behind how data kind of helps us to understand our existing culture. So what really, for me, is exciting in terms of data coming into talent acquisition is to me as a talent acquisition professional, it's not just they're talking to me about what is the talent we have to look from a culture perspective, but it also giving me a feedback of all our hires over the course of period to see what really worked, what didn't really work, and also give us a constant feedback on what we need to go back in terms of our hiring processes to refine to identify the right talent. So for me, data in terms of culture, especially in a talent acquisition perspective, is a great hindsight tool. We basically say hindsight is something that is very difficult. It only comes when time is past, right? But for me, data is something which is a great hindsight tool for us to use to kind of constantly evolve our talent acquisition processes to kind of include or find a better culture fits for our organizations too. So what used to be just a gut feeling earlier in terms of culture of somebody fitting into an organization, today there is a lot of science that is able to come within because of the application of data analytics into talent acquisition process, especially on the culture side.
Yes, so I completely agree with both of you. Actually, it's a very difficult technical mathematical problem to solve, this finding out the culture, because we try to solve it in one way, which is known as the affinity analysis, where we find out, say, company A historically for the last 10 years, 15 years has hired from, say, BCD. Okay, A has hired from BCD and B has hired from XYZ. Okay, so this kind of things we do, and then we collate a bunch of companies, and then we show this candidates to companies, so that increases the relevancy a lot. But to fine tune and like bring the exact candidates will need a lot more computational power, which we are trying to solve.
Just to add to that, Sarabjit, I think gamification has actually been a very useful tool when it comes to culture assessment. So because with that coming in, it has actually made our job easier to identify better culture than what it was before.
Exactly. Yeah, and also this test which we do, what do you think the efficiency of this test are, like the psychometric tests and all this kind of tests which we do? So yeah, your thoughts on this, anyone can
Yeah, I'll let Akshay go first. I'm not a great fan of that to start with.
Yeah, I would say it's a mixed bag, and you need to take it with a pinch of salt. I think what's really important is I think organizations who swear by it, I understand where they're coming from. So I would not negate it, but it has to be a middle path. As we were talking in the beginning of the conversation, right? It is these are your, I would say different tools in your armament, right? Don't use one to wage a war against somebody, right? Use it for a more effective decision making. Don't use it as okay, because this tool is saying this, so I'm going to go against the candidacy of the candidate. I'm going to go further. So I think it has to be a middle part, and use it as a power to take a better decision rather than just relying on in that particular aspect to take a decision. I think that's where you need to have a fine balance between the two. And yeah, so I think that's important. And plus, I think a lot has changed in the past, decade, where the focus is not on what the person is today, but the point is what the person is going to bring in probably in the next 2 years or 3 years. What's the attitude and aptitude? What's that agility of learning and pivoting to something different? I think that's what organizations are looking more than what you bring in today. But again, every organization is at a different maturity stage. But that's the more progressive way of looking at it. That how you can have your talent pivot into something else, because as far as the future of work is concerned, you really don't know how the job's going to turn out to be tomorrow and day after.
And also the economy of the gig work, like gig work coming in, so that becomes a lot of the cultural becomes a lot of importance. Plus skills, they are highly skilled, but are they a cultural fit for you? So that is one more question there.
Exactly. Just to add to what Akshay said, I think these assessments can be used as a reference point for us to probably have deeper conversations with candidates to kind of really identify instead of just using them as your selection rejection criteria. Yes.
Exactly. So Suresh, I move on to the next question, and this word has been used a lot in this webinar itself. So how has leveraging data analytics helped you to tackle unconscious bias in your process, or when you are building the process for a company or for the whole team? So Suresh, I'll start with you.
For me, data and analytics still has a long way to go in this space. But one thing it really helped me that I've seen in my own experiences, it helps us to uncover our blind spots, because to us, unconscious bias is basically that we don't know it exists in us, right? So one great area that I've seen a lot of success in within our own organizations is in the pay gap analysis, where we kind of apply data analytics to understand how we can kind of drive more equitable employment for everybody. And that's an area that I've seen a great success. I still don't have a lot of a view on this, because I see this as a constantly evolving space with a lot of potential for us to grow. But one, DNI, as Akshay already mentioned, DNI is a space that we can very successfully use data and analytics to kind of identify our unconscious biases within the organizations, and also put strategies and structures around it to kind of negate and manage them.
Understood. Akshay, your thoughts on this?
I would say I'll just go a step forward. So, of course, in recruiting, it's a great tool. I think insights uncovered through data analytics, right, on the unconscious bias, I think helps organization to really plan their training programs, their, for their, leadership, for their, people leaders, to ensure because that, it's there today, it's not there tomorrow, right? I think, and it's constantly has to be augmented by interventions time and again, right? Because because these are like unconscious biases, as Suresh said, they're inherently there in your DNA, right? You may try to reform it by intervention, but then you're going to go back to yourself probably 3-6 months later, right? So yes. I think what's important is that you continue to double down on these through using the insights and train, because let's say for example we did uncovered not the best way of doing a recruiting in a particular team, right? And you continue to really look with close eye that is it now happening the way it should be done in terms of from a non-biased perspective, but probably people will go back to the old pattern. So I think it's a constant gaze which you need to keep it, and then have interventions to really keep people away from their usual self, which I think it's not intentional, but you get into the pattern again and again. I think that's so. I think I would use that a lot more for training and development once we know where the problem is.
Okay, great insights, folks, and yeah. So whoever is listening to this will have a lot of insights. Like we have a lot of folks who are online, and plus who will be listening on to this podcast when we send to them. So great insights from both of you. And with that, we come to the last question, and then we will have the audience Q&A. So the last question, Akshay, continuing with this, in the age of digital natives, how can data analytics help us better understand and attract the Gen Z talent, which is quite a different breed altogether?
I would say, all of us are using the power of analytics, not just with Gen Z, but for all generational workforce, right? I think never ever in our lives, we have a workforce right from probably baby boomers and before till ZX, Gen Z, and whatever the nomenclature you have. I think what's important is that, with all these generation of talent you are seeking and are there in your organization, through the power of analytics, it helps you to create bespoke strategy in talent attraction, right? Create a persona-based recruitment strategy, right? Your EVP would be, as let's say, 10 aspects which are covering your EVP, but you need to really personalize your EVP messaging in your talent branding based on which generation you are targeting, right? For example, for a baby boomer, they may be more interested to know how the health plan works versus Gen Z, who would be probably more keen to know about the remote work opportunity, right? So I think you need to pull these different levers in your marketing and branding aspect, and the recruiters have to do a good job in communicating it well. So I think power of analytics will be used there in pitching your conversation to the right audience, what ticks to them.
Okay. And maybe also modifying them according to the age of the audience.
You would need to, and I think that's already happening, right? Because otherwise, it will be gibberish for all. Because I may not be interested. Probably I want to work full time, 5 days away from office. So even if you're gonna talk about that, okay, I am a 100% remote organization, it doesn't interest me. I would rather need to know, okay, what are your health benefits? Because I think that I'm in that stage of life that is more important for me to know. So I think that's where analytics helps you to really, do the segregation and, have a more bespoke strategy for talent traction and augmenting it.
Okay. So coming to Suresh, like, what are your thoughts on attracting this kind of talent, which are millennials, Gen Z, who are more prone to, say, shorter videos or something like that, and then getting more information in very bite-sized information, not like long blog posts or stuff like that. So over to you, Suresh. How can data analytics help us better understand and attract this kind of talent?
Right. To me, the biggest power of data analytics in this particular thing is, as Akshay said, it kind of helps us to package our strategy and approach specific to different generational things. And for me, the biggest USP of using data analytics in this is it kind of helps us bridge the gaps between generations. What typically would have been difficult for me to understand of somebody who's graduating out of college or somebody who's in the early 20s, that gap is getting narrowed today because data and analytics are providing us the insights in terms of what will excite them. And I've personally seen, and I've seen the success of using data and analytics in terms of creating a customized and tailored social media engagements which target specifically your Gen Z community. And as Akshay rightly said, there are different groups of generational employees who have their needs and their aspirations are different. Having data and analytics in part of our talent acquisition process is helping us to identify and provide those very personalized experiences that every a generation needs. So especially with Gen Z, because their attention span is very less, right? So it kind of helps us to not just make us look like a very prospective employer, but it also helps us to address their aspirations in terms of where they want to be over the next 5 and 10 years. So data and analytics is a great tool for us because it kind of removes a handicap away from me, right? I don't have to really break my head to understand what a Gen Z is thinking about, an organization, what makes a brand stand out to a Gen Z talent pool then whatnot.
Okay. So very interesting problem to have, actually. Like, what are the channels where we should target them? How you should target them? What are the language we should use? That also, I think, that is mainly data will help you to understand kind of stuff. So with that, we move on to the audience Q&A. And we'll start off the first question. So anybody can take this question. And we have the first one from Sunena Dwivedi. Sunena asks, like, what data should a small to mid-sized company start collecting to improve their hiring process?
Okay, let me start, and then probably Suresh, you can build it up on that. And this is a chicken and egg problem, right? Yeah. Because when you're starting from ground up, you say, I don't have data. What do I do? So I think what's important is, of course, one should have industry data, which now is available online to public sources. I think that becomes your, I would say, bedrock to a sense to benchmark yourself. I think that's one. But if I talk about typical data, I think your sourcing channel, how does it look like? Your candidate demographics, how does it look like? Your typical metrics on recruiting, like time to fail, quality of hires, and so on and so forth. I think these are like fundamental data points which one should start collecting from day one onwards. And as the organization mature, I think data points like how employees are actually doing, post their, in the last 1 year, the performance, the engagement scores of them, the retention rate, right? And then all that you can collapse with all the recruiting data which you captured at the time of the funnel, and then have draw a lot of essential insights. So I think it's a journey. You can't achieve it right on day one, and it's a little painful. But I think start somewhere, start small, start basic, and then build it up further on it, and continue to benchmark with the the public data on industry you belong to, or the North Star organization which your organization aspire to be. I think that's the way you need to really take up this journey.
Okay, great answer, Akshay. So, Suresh, your thoughts on this?
Well, I kind of agree with Akshay on all of these points. Very important when an organization is starting small or when they are looking at data and analytics journey, it's important for them to understand the data points they want to collect, which are addressing the experiences of both business as well as the candidate community. So if they are able to have a clear vision there, and as Akshay said, quality of hire, time to fill, the engagement scores of a candidate through the interview process, these are some critical data points that they can start. But for my personal advice from the experience, it is easy to get carried away with putting a lot of data on the table, right? So it's very important for them to start small, pick up the problem statement or the use case that they have in their organization that they want to fix, and start looking at what data points are going to be connected to that problem statement, and then start building from there. Once they see an ROI, then it becomes easier for them to expand the scope, and obviously the stakeholder investment also comes in because there is a return on investment that they have already done.
Understood. I think Sunena, you have got your answer. I move on to the next question. Mansi call. She asked that what are some common pitfalls to avoid when implementing data-driven decision making in talent acquisition?
So this again kind of ties back to the earlier points, Arabjit, because a lot of people get excited with data, and for them everything becomes data, right? So some of the common pitfalls is, what is that data you want to really acquire, and is the data biased or unbiased? What is your collection methodology for these data? So if the data is going to be quality of data is not great, then the results or the observations or the insights that's coming from data is going to be bad. So it's very important not to get carried away again. Start small, have a very clear, focused approach in terms of what is the purpose of the data you're collecting, and how is this data going to turn around insights to you. If you have that, and it will be always giving you positive ROIs.
Great. Akshay, your thoughts on this?
I think I'll just want to sum it up what Suresh said. Okay. Fall in love with the problem, not with the solution.
Okay.
So contextualize it. I think that's important.
Great. Mansi, you got the answer, I suppose. And now we move on to the next one, which is Kuber Bhatia. How can data analytics help in building a more diverse and inclusive workforce?
I think this is something which we've already discussed, a couple of times in our conversation today, right? I think so. I'll just taking the opportunity to repeat myself, right? So with the power of data, you can actually pinpoint instances, stages, or in the recruiting funnel or in the hiring process where there is conscious or unconscious bias coming in, because you'll get to see patterns which are away from the normal, right? And also your data would also help you to measure what's the right approach. So you continue to benchmark it with what's right and where it is falling short of it, right? I think that's what it's going to do all the time. But the thing is, you need to be very prescriptive about it. You need to be very consistent about it, and keep your eyes and ears pretty focused in terms of what the information is trying to tell you, right? As long as you are focused, I think those spikes are easy to be comprehended. The challenge comes, it's not about identifying the issue. The problem comes when you need to go back to the teams and or to the individuals and try to have a meaningful conversation. Okay, that this is what it is, and it's not working, and we need to something else differently. I think that's where the challenge is, in terms of helping others to show what's not working, and then bringing them along in the journey and trying to solution it. I think that's where the challenge is, rather than finding why something's not happening. I think that's the easiest
Okay.
in this journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, to simplify, I would say power of hindsight to build proactive measures. So that's what data for me will come very handy when it comes to inclusivity and cultural biases.
Okay. Okay. So we have one live question right now. I'll just ask because we have a less amount of time. But James asks, like, how can data help me reduce offer drop-offs and maybe attrition?
That's a problem that every organization has, and I don't think nobody has a magic bullet yet. But what it does is say there are a lot of positive insights that we have seen from a candidate experience perspective, where we have used some of the AI tools. It helps us to understand the engagement levels of the candidates. So sometimes we recruiters or talent acquisition people are very emotional and attached to our candidates, right? So we don't have a very objective view of the candidate's interest about the opportunity. So, but data kind of helps us to clear our glasses, and it tells us how engaged or unengaged the candidates are. So, I think that's something that really helps. The same tools, can be used for the employees also to understand their engagement levels, and also build interventions to kind of help them address their challenges or address their concerns, and make them more engaged in their employment.
Understood. Akshay, you want to throw some light on this?
No, nothing much. I think Suresh has summed it up. But you need to understand your pool better. I think as long as you know whom are you approaching, where you're approaching, at what time and place, I think that insight would help you. But again, it's not a magic bullet. You will still experience the issue which you are facing.
Okay. So we will move on to the last question which we have from the audience. Is from Jagdish Sharma. So how important is it for a recruiter to have data analysis skill in today's job market?
Okay. What I think is it's a must-have skill, but there is a very thin line of distinction between whether you want to be a data expert or you want to be comfortable with data. My response would be that everyone in the recruiting organization needs to be comfortable with data. They need to understand the power of storyboarding. They need to have the skill of contextualizing the information and then weaving that when you are articulating it well with your stakeholders. I think that's more important. You don't need to be a data geek. You have the power of or the skill of your people analytics team to help you to slice the data, to play around with the data. I think you will get that help. I think what's more important is I think contextualize and storyboarding and then articulating well. I think that's where I would say everyone should invest their time and effort. And I think as leaders, I think what's important is to really support a data-driven culture. I think it has to start from the ground up. And I think that's very important. And last I would say is that stay away from jargons. I think what happens is that just to impress ourselves or our stakeholders, we end up getting into the web of jargons, and it really doesn't help you. It confuses you all more, and of course your audience. I think try to probably focus on I would say contextualizing and storyboarding, and I think that will take you far in your career as a recruiter or a TA professional.
Yeah, I kind of very much agree with what Akshay said. As a recruiter, it's important for us to kind of understand the data that's being presented to us and how that is going to be useful for our job. So as long as the recruiters are comfortable in using the data and articulating their views or building their operational strategies based on that, I think that should be more than enough. Having data is not going to be of immense help, but not having data is surely going to be a challenge for recruiters in the future.
Understood. Okay, so we have come to the end of the webinar, but before we leave, I want so we have talked about a lot about the recruiter side of it. So right now we can have a few tips from you so that job seekers or candidates can land up better jobs, that dream jobs. So maybe a few tips from Akshay and Suresh which can help the other community, which is we have a very huge candidate community of few millions. So Akshay and Suresh, if you can give some tips so that we can broadcast them, that will help a lot.
See, you would need to have a separate session for that, Sabujit,
Okay.
right? But I think if you ask me personally, I would say, do your homework well
Okay.
to the organization you're trying to target. Know it well in and out. I think what's important is that, and that's true for everyone, especially for people in HR as well, that understand the business, right? So I think when you're approaching for an opportunity, right, you need to have a basic understanding of the business, and how does your role or prospective role of yours would fit into the value chain. I think that's important. Don't be pretty focused on what you do, of course, but what's the input and the output of your job. I think that's important. As long as you're able to understand that well, and then able to articulate it nicely to the whosoever you're having a conversation with your prospective employer, I think it'll do a lot good to you. And continue to network. I think there is no replacement, or there's nothing more than just networking. I think you need to do it. I feel it at times little sorry because of the whole COVID situation. People have become so used to the online way of operating, right? That it has really killed the power of networking. Because networking was about catching with people in person, having a coffee chat, or meeting somewhere outside the office space. That has reduced to these online conversations, which are good, but I think I would still value a lot more in-person connects when you're creating your network than those remote connects. But again, that's very personal opinion of mine, and a lot of people will disagree. But yeah, a few things which I feel can do a lot good to all of us at any stage of your career, not just probably when you're just starting your career journey.
Great, great insights, Akshay. So Suresh, over to you. In like tips for our job seekers, if you want to.
I'd say two things. One, as a candidate, we should be very clear about what we want in terms of our job search. That's one, and we should not have a sense of entitlement because of our background. So a lot of times, organizations are okay to hire people who may not have the skills which are exactly required for the role, but they hire them for the attitude and the trainability and the potential. So it's important to not have a sense of entitlement, and most importantly, have a growth mindset, because today, especially in the technology, the world is changing fast, right? So we will not be always hiring for the skills. We will also be hiring for the potential the person brings in to kind of adapt to the newer technologies as they come. So having no sense of entitlement when they actually engage in this a conversation, and second, having a constant growth mindset will really help them to navigate not just now but throughout their course of professional career.
Great. So, great insights, Suresh and Akshay, on data analytics, on how we can leverage data to help organization grow, build larger companies. And with that, we come to this session of the entire roundtable. It has been a great discussion with all of you guys, with a lot of insight, a lot of discussions, and we have a lot of questions from the audience also over our Gmail accounts and over LinkedIn. So I will send across a few of them to you. So if you can answer them, I will send back to the people who have asked it. And thank you for your time. And we had a lovely evening with all of you. And thank you for joining in, Akshay and Suresh.
Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation. So hopefully, I was able to make a difference in whoever was listening. I think that's the intention.
Sure.
And then, it was wonderful being part of this panel, and a lot of, in fact, I came with percentage of learning, and I'm taking a lot of things back from the conversation that we had. And thank you for having us here. And hopefully, I personally added some value to people who are part of this entire podcast over the period of 1 hour.
Yeah, great. Thank you guys for joining in. Have a lovely
All
evening.
right.
Thank you all.
Bye.